Good morning, folks. I'm Nick Hawks with Paleo Treats, going over the 7 pillars of paleo idea. And this first pillar we're going to go over today is nutrition. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is anything that you put in your body, foods, supplements, herbs, spices, all of that stuff, anything that you put inside you, that's what we're going to cover under this idea of nutrition. So way more important than any one diet. We like paleo, but lots of people do lots of different things, is the idea that what you put in your body affects you powerfully, right? So whether you're eating paleo or vegan or something that's specific to celiac or AIP, some specific protocol, all of those things don't matter as much as you understanding that the food that you put in you affects you powerfully. So everybody's a little bit different. Some people don't do well with meat. Some people don't do well on an all vegetable diet. That's fine. We're not saying that there's only one perfect diet. We're saying to start with this idea that if you want to live a lifestyle that has been given to you by 2 million years of evolution, pay attention to what you're putting in your body and how it makes you feel, think, perform, all that stuff. So that's where we start with nutrition. So let's start in with what's the kind of the first part of paleo when it comes to nutrition is we think don't try and replace the diet that you had before, right? So one thing we see a lot of is people saying, oh, I want to find paleo pizza, or I want to find paleo ice cream, or I want to find paleo lasagna, whatever it is. They want to take their old diet, which gave them all the problems they're trying to get rid of, and replace it with the same diet with just different ingredients. And it's definitely a step in the right direction, but that won't get you all of where you want to go or near where you want to go. So the first thing that we think of is elimination. And this is the idea that a lot of the foods that you eat right now on your current diet, or the diet maybe you just left behind, are the ones that are pretty bad for you. And when we think of those, the number one thing with elimination is getting rid of excess sugar as your first step, right? If you get rid of excess sugar, and let's say that this line here represents all of the possible benefits you could get. So this is 0%, and this is 100% of the benefits you can get from changing your diet. Right here is where you are right now. Right here is where you want to be. Just getting rid of sugar, that will do about this much. That's 50% of your problems. Okay, is just too much sugar. Now that doesn't mean you can never have sugar. That's a silly thing, and I don't think that's sustainable for most people, at least in America, and certainly not for you, or for me, is getting rid of sugar completely. So how do you manage how much sugar you have in? Well, first thing is get rid of it for at least 2 out of the 3 meals that most people eat. We'll talk more about kind of moving meals around later and skipping meals and intermittent fasting, going way into the depths of nutrition, but for right now, let's talk about getting sugar out of the majority of most of your meals. So most people have their breakfast, they have cereal, maybe they put sugar on it, but there's definitely sugar in it. They have toast with jam or peanut butter or whatever your spread is that you put on toast. Just getting rid of that stuff, never mind the fact that those are glutens and grains, gluten, grain, and dairy. These are the other things to eliminate. But almost always, in fact, always at least for dairy, in the glutens and grains, there's lots of sugar. So if you can just get rid of sugar, you will have done 50% of the work that goes towards maintaining a healthy diet for you. Now, to every rule, there's exceptions. I'm gonna have the fruitarians who eat nothing but fruit kick up their, or throw up their hands on this and say that's totally wrong. Fine. For fruitarians, this is wrong. For everyone else, this is right on. This is bang on. This is exactly what you need. So first, get rid of sugar. Eliminate all the sugar in your diet. Second, get rid of the glutens, grains, and dairies. Now, for some people, they tolerate that fine. But for most people, they have some kind of inflammatory, and all of these things create an inflammatory reaction in your body to some extent. Some of us do just fine with them, and we can have some of these in moderation or in minimums and just be okay. But for most people, all of these things cause inflammation. So we want to get rid of those first. So before we get into kind of grass-fed, organic, shade-grown, bird-friendly, all the labels that you see on various healthy foods. Let's get rid of the stuff that we know is going to be a problem for most people. For almost everyone, excess sugar is a problem. For lots and lots of people, one of these three things is a pretty big problem. So we want to get rid of those. So the first part of paleo is this idea of eliminate the obvious things. The next thing to eliminate after you've gotten rid of that is going to be thinking about how do I get rid of a lot of the chemicals that are in a modern diet, right? And this is more preservatives, stabilizers, and all of the chemicals you see at kind of the tail end of most packaged foods ingredient list. So you want to remove that out. Now that comes pretty naturally once you get rid of prepackaged foods. So no TV dinners, no kind of pre-made stuff. Make as much of your food as you can. There are a couple exceptions. There's definitely companies that are catering specifically for you. Pete's Paleo is one of them. They make pre-made paleo meals that have none of that crap in there. But for the most part, the frozen dinners that you see at the store will have so much of this stuff in there that any kind of healthy benefits they might have are offset by the garbage that's in there. So that's the first part of any healthy diet, is elimination. Now, you'll notice that we're not super strict or crazy about paleo in particular. We think that paleo is a really good way to eat and is generally healthy for most people, but we acknowledge it's not the only way. So we're going to start off with the basics of getting you healthy before we dive really deep into what paleo is. So the second part of getting, I'm going to leave this up here now because I'm going to use it again. The second part of getting your diet cleaner and more paleo is what we call education. And what most people would call education, right? So this is getting religious about, and by religious I mean strict, about reading the labels. Read the labels on every single thing you buy. Know what you're putting in your body. Remember, point one is that the most important part of a diet is knowing what you're putting in your body and how it affects you. If you notice that in lots and lots of the labels that you're looking at, you see something as innocuous as coconut sugar, or maybe you see something arrowroot flour or whatever it is, and you notice that every time you eat that thing, it makes you feel bad. It doesn't matter how healthy the labels claim that product is. Stop eating it. You need to pay attention to what is going on in your body when you eat certain foods, right? Not everybody can have broccoli or carrots or whatever it is at every meal, and you need to figure out kind of what those trigger foods are for you, those inflammatory foods are for you. So we do education, starting off with the labels, getting rid of the junk. And then the second part with this education idea is just starting to clean up your diet. So you look at your food and you say, is this a meat, vegetable, fruit, nut, or seed? All right. And if it's not one of these things, we're still not on, and it doesn't fit into the, we're trying to stay away from that gluten, grain, dairy, excess sugar. If you're in this ballpark, all right, now you're starting to get up to here, maybe 60 or 70%. Right? And this comes from the education piece. So you're making not as big of a step as cutting out sugar, but you're making a nice big step towards being a healthy, super healthy, kind of 100% clean eating person. So we think about narrowing down food to just this. Now we're going to talk about proportions next. We're going to talk about proportions a little bit later. But for right now, if you can just get your diet to consist of this stuff and almost all of this as fresh or direct from the grocery store or the farmer's market, wherever you get it, that's fantastic. You're going to be doing a lot of work with that. Then you're going to see if you can increase the quality, right? This is the quality of your food. So if you start off and you're getting all this stuff from Costco or Walmart or whatever, like it doesn't matter where you're getting it, as long as you're getting this stuff and you're not getting chips and cookies and dips and salsa and jars of preservative-laden food. As long as you're getting this stuff, you're doing this kind of part. This next increase in quality, I don't know, maybe another 5 or 10%. Now you're at 70, 75%, right? So the quality increase, I know people are going to scream about this. It's not as big of a deal as getting rid of sugar and as getting rid of all the junk and preservatives. It's important, and it's definitely a step. You're not going to get to 100% without it, but it's not as big of a deal as you might think it would be. So what you want are nutrient-dense, clean fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, vegetables, and meat. So that's where you start looking at, is this grass-fed? Is it local? All right, is this thing traveling halfway around the world to get to me? Because if it is, there's going to be some kind of preservative that has to go into it, whether that's a little bit or a lot, whether it's a chemical, whether it's an environmental preservative, any of those things, it's going to need something to get to you in good condition. And then you think about where you're going to source this. Is this going to come from a CSA, which is community supported agriculture? So almost wherever you live in America, there's going to be some kind of farm near you that does a CSA. So you buy a share of their produce, and then whatever they produce, you get a little piece of that. And that's usually a bag of groceries. Here in San Diego, it's a bag of groceries you pick up once a week, once every other week, and then you make whatever is kind of in season out of that. And then the last piece for this education part is hydration. Most people ignore this. Hydration is what allows you, that's drinking water, right? Let's not get too scientific here. Hydration is what allows you to flush out all of the garbage that is invariably going to sneak into your diet. You go out for lunch with friends and you have chips, you accidentally get some gluten in, you drink or you have a bowl of ice cream, whatever it is. If you want to get rid of that stuff and get that through your body, let's not pretend that you'll never have any of that stuff again. Unless you have some kind of specific health condition. But if you are drinking water and you're staying hydrated, it's really easy for you to flush out those really small inputs of bad foods, right? Whatever they are. So that's the education piece, is kind of knowing what to put in your body, knowing what to look for. And a lot of this stuff is going to make sense as you go through and do it. If you just start reading the labels and you see, man, there's a lot of stuff in the food that I was eating that I don't understand what the ingredient was. It's disaccharide, poly, wazoo, schmazoo, this, that, or the other. If you don't know what it is, it's not a perfect rule, but it's probably a good idea not to eat it, okay? And then now that we've done the basics of saying, hey, we eliminated all the garbage from our diet, we eliminated gluten, grain, and dairy, we eliminated the excess sugar, now we're kind of up here at the 70%, is start to think about this next part will get you up to 80 or 90, is the customization, all right? So this is where we start to talk about ratios and portion control. Ratios and portion control. Ratios are the idea that your proteins, your fats, and your carbs should be in kind of different varying ratios to each other, right? You're not going to have the same amount of proteins, fats, and carbs. And then for some people, they respond better to a lower protein or a higher protein, or usually not a low fat or a high fat, but everybody's a little bit different. And then really this portion control idea. And then we think about, so portion control, let's talk about that for a second, is when you have your plate of food for, let's just say dinner, all right, but it can apply to any meal. You want a piece of protein no bigger than the size of your palm. I got pretty little hands. I don't need to eat a lot of protein, especially now as I'm not working out a ton. So on that plate, here's your protein, and maybe it's kind of that much, maybe not, maybe it look like a pizza. And then the rest of the plate covered in veggies, so salad stuff, maybe a half a piece of fruit, quarter piece of fruit, seeds and nuts. And you can roast the seeds and nuts, go crazy on that. But that's kind of what we want. The normal plate that we see at a kind of in your old diet, you might have had a big old steak, nice T-bone, and then a little bit of salad on that thing. So that's going to be the wrong general ratio and the wrong general portion. So that portion control leads into, from there, we'll go into timing. And this is where, so this ratio and portion control got you this amount here. And now we're going to get into the last 5 or 10% of what you might get out of a diet. Now, you're going to see a lot of marketing that is going to tell you that this part that we're going to talk about is actually, 70 or 100% of a healthy diet. It's not. This is the very last little piece. Timing is the idea of maybe skipping a meal. So for most people, they'll skip breakfast or lunch. And then that leads into intermittent fasting, which is this idea of going for a period of time without food. So this stuff only gets you that last little piece. we suggest once you've got all of the rest of it done, you've eliminated the sugar, you started eating a little cleaner, you started reading the labels, you started working your ratios, now you've got your portion control down, you're eating that plate of food, protein no bigger than the size of your palm, the rest of it with a salad, nice veggies, something like that. Now you start to think about, okay, what can I cut out? And what you'll notice is that you can cut out a lot of food from your day, especially if you're not super active. Now, I know some of you are triathletes and you are determined to eat as much as you need to fuel your races. That's totally cool. For that, you can up your carbohydrates a little bit and start to switch out stuff or bring in stuff to your diet that's not traditionally totally paleo, like sweet potatoes or regular potatoes, starch, stuff like that, kind of starchy vegetables. That's no problem as long as you have that high energy output, you're training for something big. If you're like me and you're not doing a ton of physical training, I do a lot of flying in my paraglider. Every so often I'll run up the hill with the 35-pound ruck on my back. But other than that, I'm not doing kind of daily grind workouts. I don't need to eat that much carbs. I don't need to eat that much food. Right? It's a strange concept, especially for Americans. We've been told almost our whole lives you need to get 3 square meals a day. You don't. That's not a healthy thing for you to do. It's much healthier to get rid of at least one of those meals. Whether it's breakfast or lunch, those are the 2 easy ones to skip. I recommend skipping breakfast because that gives you a nice long time to fast. So you go from dinner the night before all the way through the night, past your breakfast to maybe an early lunch at 2 o'clock. If you do that, you'll start to get into this last 10%, all right? There's real geekery to get that last kind of 2% out of there, and that's beyond really the purview of this specific video. But if you do all this stuff that I've talked about so far, you're gonna get 95, 98% of what you wanna get out of a healthy diet. So this intermittent fasting can be just a day at a time and skipping meals as a part of your normal routine, or intermittent fasting can go for a much longer period. You can skip 24, 48, 96, whatever it is, 120 hours of food and experiment with that. Now that's way beyond what we're gonna talk about in this video, but none of that stuff will kill you as long as you're a reasonably healthy person. And even a 10-day fast right now, 10-day water fast, for most people watching this video is gonna be not no problem, but it certainly won't be unhealthy for you. Okay, so that's basically the nutrition pillar of paleo. Now, we didn't talk about specific foods other than that idea of meats, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, and avoiding gluten, grains, and dairies. That's because everybody is so different. If I give you one specific diet to follow, it's going to work for 70% of you, and I don't want to leave out that other 30%. So the last part we talked about a little bit just now is this kind of eating for performance. Now, I'll be honest with you. Most people don't need to change what I just gave you at all right? You have been convinced by marketing that if you are a triathlete or an endurance runner or a CrossFit athlete or whatever, that you need all kinds of extra supplements, that you need to go crazy with your specific timing, that you can never have this, that, or the other, you have to have whatever the food is. Look, for performance stuff, eat that same way that I had just said. So skip breakfast, clean foods for lunch and dinner. If you want to have a meal right after workout within that golden hour or golden 30 minutes, that's totally fine. Experiment, see what works for you. Remember, rule number 1 is notice what's going on when you put certain foods in your body. Pay attention to what works for you, because what works for me doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you. And then if you're doing that high energy output stuff, sure, add in some more starches, add in some potatoes, add in sweet potatoes, starchy roots, all of that stuff. But be careful with it and notice it. I've noticed for me that if I put too much of that stuff in, and there's a pretty fine line there, that all of a sudden I'm sleeping way more than I need to because my body is starting to spin up the inflammatory cycle to get rid of all that extra junk. You are designed to eat very little sugar, starches, and starchy root vegetables over a period of time, right? At any one period, you can have kind of spikes in them. So yeah, sometimes you have tons of fruit, that's totally fine. Sometimes you go and just jump off the wagon and have 6 bowls of ice cream and cookies. You're gonna feel like garbage for the next couple days, but as long as that's kind of a once a quarter in a year or once every 6 months thing, that's not gonna be a big deal for most of you. That's nutrition in the 7 pillars of paleo idea. Thanks so much for watching, and stoked to have you on for the next time. All right, ciao, ciao.